Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hypes Watch reread of The Winds of Winter, Arianne II. Today, we are joined by a very special guest. He's a Twitter extraordinaire, Song of Ice and Fire, great, one of the leaders of the fandom. Mr. Beefish, will you introduce yourself?
I don't know about all that, being a leader in the fandom. I mean, kind of a thought leader, but not a leader in the fandom. Hi, I'm Jeff. I'm better known as Bernard Beefish. I'm the founder of the Wars and Politics of Ice and Fire blog, and I'm happy to be here talking about Arianne because I've been kind of delving a lot into Arianne's chapters in The Winds of Winter as well as in her chapters in The Feast for Crows as well. So happy to be here, happy to be talking about this pretty awesome chapter all around.
All right, well, we have the ladies introduce themselves next.
Well, hey guys, I'm Anne, also known as Sweet YFT. Glad to be here today.
Hello everyone, I'm Tinker. I'm not particularly feeling very well today, but I'm going to try my best. So I don't know how much I'll be doing part of this reread, but I really love Arianne and Dorne at this chapter, so I really wanted to be here.
Hey everyone, it's T. I'm glad to be back. I'm excited for this. I hope you guys are excited as well. It's always fun with the Clash of Queens ladies and also just with the Hypes Watch. So I hope you guys enjoy it.
All right, Don Willie.
What's going on, everybody? Valor Mogolis, this is Don Willie, and I'm here with my tinfoil cap on just in case we happen to get into some extra tinfoil today. So thanks for having me.
We might.
Indeed. Jerry?
Hey everyone, it's Jerry the Targaryen Steamboat. I heard we were talking Dorne today, some Arianne, Dornish talk today, and I had to come. Glad to be here.
Yeah, my name is James Bushell. I'm kind of the pseudo moderator of this today. So first things first, I know Anne wanted to ask a question about the potential titles of this chapter.
Yeah, well, first off, before that, I just want to remind everyone that this is a sample chapter and that they are obviously subject to change before publishing. And there was no written version of this chapter, only George reading it at Tasquin Worldcon in 2015. And what we were working on is actually a transcript made by Jeff here and Aziz from Westeros History. And so the finalized chapter might be very different from what we're talking about here.
Yeah, so George R. R. Martin, like when he writes these chapters, the ones he tends to release as sample chapters, the ones that are in the written form, are basically his finalized version that only need a few corrections, grammar mistakes that he might see, or maybe he'll rewrite a sentence here and there. The ones he reads at conventions, for instance, this Arianne II chapter, which was read at SaskCon in 2015, but also actually was read at Worldcon in 2011, in August 2011, shortly after the publication of A Dance with Dragons, or September 2011. He reads these so that folks who he'll get audience reactions to the chapter, see how he's doing it. For instance, when George was writing A Dance with Dragons, he read the prologue chapter from the perspective of Faramir Sixskins in 2007. So he had this chapter already written up in 2007. But he came back and he read to the audience. The audience was like, well, George, this is a good chapter, but there's a number of things that are kind of off about the chapter. You kind of repeated yourself in this part. So he actually went back and rewrote the entirety of the prologue. So George reads these chapters in an attempt to kind of garner fan reaction as well as see if there's things that he can improve upon in this chapter. So yeah, and this might not be the finalized form of the chapter. I know I was talking with Aziz from History of Westeros a few weeks ago. George read this chapter again at Mysticon in February, and Aziz said that it was mostly the same chapter. There are a few minor changes in it, but it's still it's pretty much the same thing as what the version that we have in our hands, the sample version that we have. So interesting way of writing, and also kind of a cool way for us to kind of experience the chapter as well, having it read to us.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. And regarding that, okay, we know this chapter as Arianne II. So far, in all of our published chapters, Arianne was always called something else. And so the question I want to ask you, Dorne specialist, is do you think this chapter will be called Arianne 1 in the published book? And if it does, what does that mean?
Is this a question to me?
That's a question to all of you guys.
I think most likely it'll be Arianne in the books. We know that George, when he published the Arya chapter as a sample back in 2014, that it was she titled it as Mercy, which was Arya's name in the book and also her identity. In this chapter, George tends to write chapters, especially The Feast for Crows and Dance of Dragons, with the POV name of the person who's assumed the identity, has become that identity. So, Davos is always going to be Davos because he never really has any crises of identities. He's always going to be Davos. Arianne has a number of crises of identity and crises of character, but at this point she has become Arianne after the Dorne Martell's Vengeance, Justice, Fire, and Blood. At the end of A Feast for Crows, she's finally become herself, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree. If you look at the the excerpt titles in the World of Ice and Fire app, where you can get the excerpt, it's labeled as Arianne Martell 1, and Arya is labeled as Mercy. So, so I think that it's going to be Arianne 1, and then this one's going to be simply Arianne 2, since they happen right after each other.
Yeah, I believe in Feast for Crows, her chapters were The Soiled Knight, Princess in the Tower, and what was, do you guys remember the other one? Queenmaker.
Yeah, the Soiled Knight was Ares Oakheart. I mean, it should have been an Arianne chapter, but it was, she had two chapters.
You're right.
It was the Queenmaker and the Princess in the Tower.
Yeah, I kind of agree with your point that the fact now that she, recognizes the plan, she agrees with the plan, she's now Arianne, daughter of Duran, and that's probably, I think it'll probably be Arianne 1 and 2.
Yeah, I think it means that she's embodying Dorne. She's any of her action she's gonna have from now on reflect Dorne, even if it might not be exactly what Doran had planned. And that's before she was acting sneakily and having her own personal little plans, but now it's going to be more official.
Yeah, this chapter though is actually it's actually not a recent chapter. It's actually pretty old altogether. George actually has a little bit of a history with this chapter. These two chapters, particularly these two Arianne chapters. Originally, he wrote the chapters, or he finished the chapters rather, in early 2010. Because he originally thought that these two chapters were going to be in A Dance with Dragons. George was kind of playing around with the timeline a bit while he was writing A Dance with Dragons, and at one point he thought that he would have Aegon's invasion of Westeros occur in the middle of the book as opposed to towards the end of the book, and these Arianne chapters would have to be in A Dance with Dragons in order to make that happen. So that's why George was able to release them as samples or read them as samples at Worldcon in 2011. Right after he published A Dance with Dragons. They're interesting too because they kind of take us back, so to speak. We haven't heard from Arianne, her point of view specifically since 2005 and The Feast for Crows, and we finally get Arianne's perspective in these two chapters. And she has, we'll talk more about this, and we can talk about the summary and things like that. But her perspective has definitely changed because there's been a progression of time from when she was locked in the tower, and then Doran gave his famous Vengeance, Justice, Fire, and Blood speech to Arianne. She has matured a little bit, but maybe not as much as she thinks she has. So it's going to be interesting to see how her journey progresses, because George had originally planned after these two chapters. He has a third Arianne chapter planned, which we'll probably see in the Winds of Winter, where there'll be a major event that'll happen, which we'll talk about probably at the end of this broadcast. But yeah, so it's interesting how George kind of does the writing process for A Dance with Dragons and the Winds of Winter and how these chapters came into being.
Right.
George planning on having Aegon do his invasion in mid-book would also give more sense to why he named the book A Dance with Dragons.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Tink T, Don Willie, anything to add, or shall we move on to the actual summary?
No, I'm good.
Me too.
All right, so we will move on to the summary, and we're going to break it down by each time a raven gets sent out. So starting out, we have, after crossing the Sea of Dorne, Arianne and her 6 companions embark on a fateful journey to determine whether Dorne will declare for Aegon and join in his war against the Iron Throne. They arrive at a settlement known as the Weeping Town and hear of wars and rumors of war. To their surprise, they discover that the Stormlands is divided in their loyalty between the Lion and the Dragon. Arianne dispatches her first raven, essentially recapping what she learned. And also, when we're talking about the 6 companions, I think most importantly we should bring up that they are Daemon Sand, Elia Sand, and Feather. Those were the most important 3, in my opinion. So, yeah, you guys want to expound upon that first part and talk about your, what you thought?
I agree on our companions. I'm not the most knowledgeable as far as Dorne is concerned. And rereading that chapter, I was a little shocked that Daemon was the only one that existed in the previous books, and that here she's with 6 companions that we have never heard of before.
What's interesting about Sir Daemon Sand is that I believe the World of Ice and Fire app lists this. It's hinted at in the chapter itself, but the World of Ice and Fire app lists that Arianne and Sir Daemon Sand were lovers at one point beforehand, before the chapter occurred. And in the chapter itself, it talks about later on how Daemon Sand had asked for Arianne's hand in marriage at one point in the long before, when Dorne Martell is attempting to keep Arianne for Viserys, and but then he actually ends up being rejected by Arianne. So there's a bit of tension in history between the two. So I thought that Daemon Sand was the most interesting one. Elia Sand was. I'm not a huge fan of the sand snakes per se, but Elia Sand kind of embodies that kind of sand snake mentality of not really considering the consequences of her action and being very very willful and discarding the careful the quote unquote careful planning that Dorne and Arianne are attempting to do and to enact in the chapter.
Yeah, I summarize the sand snake attitude as IDGAF. Go ahead, Tank.
I thought the choice of Eliasan, I thought that was also a very curious choice. From all of the sand snakes to send with their sand Eliasan that clearly has no control over herself. Later on, we see in the other chapter that she literally has to make her promise on her father's bones. But I don't know, it's such a delicate mission. They're not certain if it's the real Aegon. They've sent Quentyn over for Dany. If Quentyn has reached Dany and that's the real Aegon, they're kind of like in the middle of 2 dragons. One is family, the other one is married to family. And to send someone that, they don't know exactly if she's going to control herself. I thought there's the moment in which Arianne is thinking, I think, is like, maybe this is, punishment for what I've done to him in the past or something. But I thought that Elia sometime in the future is going to do something that's going to make things very interesting. I don't know if it's going to be good for Dorne, but also it'll be interesting for us to read.
Well, what I think is interesting about Elia Sand, is that I believe this is a theory that maybe when the first Arianne sample chapter came out, that Aziz and Shay were talking about History of Westeros, where they talk about that why did Dorne Martell send Elia Sand with Arianne as opposed to someone who's more mature and a little bit older. And their reasoning, I think it's a really good theory, and I want to get your guys' perspective on it, was that Dorne Martell sent Elia Sand along with Arianne in order to remind Arianne of herself and how foolish and how freaking foolish she is and how her planning is foolish and how she can kind of see her, a small model of herself in Elia Sand, and then that becomes like a way for her to remind herself, oh wait, I'm not supposed to be a dumbass like I was, with her Queenmaker plot from A Feast for Crows. And I wanted to see what you guys thought about that.
I agree 100%. I think even Daemon Sand, I think, is one who says or she complains about it to him.
Yeah. That's
He
at
says
the end of that
vengeance.
chapter.
Yeah. He's like, well, why did Dorne send this girl to me? And Damon's like, vengeance.
It's a really nice callback.
Yeah.
I agree with you guys. I do think that he sent her kind of almost to slow her down in a way as well, because you do see her trying to be more mature, but then she kind of slips into her old ways. And I think that she's really to remind her, but also to slow her down to get like a whole perspective. Like, this is who you were. You can't make foolish decisions.
Yep.
So.
Right. Because this also brought up,
Can't be Ned.
well, just to bring up the fact that Arianne brings up how the fact that she lost her maidenhead to Daemon Sand when she was 14, and then there's the scene later where she's catching Elia Sand in the action, going somewhere potentially with Feather, at the same age. So I think there's there's definitely parallels between the two.
Oh.
I mean, well, the thing I was going to say, too, is maybe it's also to possibly to teach Ilya something, because here you have Arianne who went through her very willful, I don't give a fuck stage, and now, maybe she has the chance to show Ilya, look, this is what I was doing before, and you saw how bad it could have turned out for me. Learn from my mistakes, so this way you won't have any mishap like I had just a short time before we went on this trip.
It could work, but it still could backfire. Like, I understand if that is the reason, but still it could backfire quite badly if, Arianne does not manage to rein her in and she does something wild and unpredictable at the wrong time. We've seen it before in the books, the people that are wild and not control themselves, if they happen to do a certain thing in a certain point, in a certain moment, things do not go well for them. This is not a kind world. And while I understand the lesson, they're going to be, especially now, they're going to a very perilous place, and
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, is basically sending her with one unruly kid, 4-person. I forgot Feathers, but who she doesn't know. So the only one that Arianne, who's in charge of a very difficult and complicated mission, can trust is Daemon, or ex-lover, who she kind of wants to get back with. And I don't know, that doesn't seem like a good crew. Like, I'm surprised that's what Dorne chose.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Well, I'm not totally surprised because Dorne Martell's not a very good strategic planner. But it is interesting. I think there was some forethought that went into it. But right, exactly. Like Lady Wainbright and Elia Sand and Daemon Sand. I also think that Daemon Sand was also in the party because to remind Arianne of her past mistakes as well, with taking Daemon Sand, a bastard, as a lover, so that she won't make any rash decisions. So she'll have a consistent reminder of both herself, as she just was with Arizocard and with the Queenmaker plot, as well as having, farther back than that, you have her past relationship with Sir Daemon Sand. That's definitely something that George is embedding into the plot architecture in there, so that she's constantly reminded. It's kind of a cool way that he does that in terms of writing the chapter itself, because it makes it a very unique storytelling method for Arianne, so that she's constantly saying, I need to be more like Dorne, I need to be more cautious. But yeah, going back to James's summary, though, I found the town itself very interesting for a couple of reasons, but I don't want to dominate the conversation. So I was wondering if you guys had observations about the town itself and what you guys saw from the perspective of Arianne in the town.
I had two quick things before, like, first to finish on Daemon Sand, like, yeah, in the two chapters. Tall crackpot. I love my crackpot. Like, I feel some Kristen Cole vibes. Ex-lover might be taking a like crazy revenge, but anyway, I just want to say something really quick about the name of the ship. The ship is called the Peregrine, and I was wondering if that had anything to do with the word in French that it comes from, pérégriner, and which means pretty much travel without a precise goal, just traveling for leisure. So if that could be an hint onto Arianne's entire journey, that it will amount to nothing.
That's awesome. I never even knew that. That's pretty cool.
Well, I searched it. It's also the name of a female character in the Wild Card series, so he could just take it from there because he likes the sound of the name. But I found it cool for the name of the ship.
I mean, well, it could be that, but I would think also, I mean, look, if their whole mission is supposed to be kind of secret, you don't want something that would scream out possible warship, right? So what is the best way to travel if you're going to be on the sea and you don't want people to suspect that you're up to something? To travel by an innocuous name, and it's like, hey, all right, this is literally the pleasure cruise. So, yeah, it's like, all right, you know what? Nah, they got nothing going on. Leave them alone. So, I mean, I think that could be part of it, but also it could be that, yeah, she does all of this, and it winds up amounting to nothing because, as Jeff stated earlier, yeah, Dorne seems to really be lacking in strategic planning. So, who knows?
I agree with Don Willie. I think it's kind of like playing a swerve on them with the name, because I mean they do have a goal in mind. The goal is to find out if this Aegon is for real or if it's just pretender sellsword. And I don't think it's going to amount to. I think it is going to amount to something. I don't think it's just going to be like nothing happens. That's just my opinion.
T, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I actually wanted to go back and kind of, I guess I want to ask you guys a question. Why do you think that Dorne chose these people to actually go with her, knowing that she doesn't really know too many of these people or don't have a close relationship? With Damon saying, there was also included in the chapter where they said he was over in Squire, but it was also a rumor that they were lovers. Did anyone catch that? And if so, do you think like something like he knew about that or something? Because it doesn't make sense to send a former lover who asked for the hand in your daughter's marriage to go with you, but then unless you know that he's not going to really try anything, like I'm just curious how you guys, what do you guys think like is going through his head as to who he chose? Because he has to choose these people carefully because that is the heir of Dorne.
Well, the one thing that comes to mind immediately is that it's a contrast to Arianne's party from the Queenmaker chapter, which Arianne has all of her friends. She has Dre and Garen, and then one outsider, which is Darkstar, in the party as well. And they royally fuck up the entire Arianne's entire mission. So when she's surrounded by strangers that she can't conspire with or kind of go sideways on Dorne's plan, she doesn't have like the same support structure she had from A Feast for Crows that she has in The Winds of Winter so far. I think that's one possibility, as well as the other things we talked about with Ilya reminding Arianne of herself and Sir David Sand reminding Arianne also of herself and her past mistakes, so that she won't make future mistakes. That's the hope, anyways.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, I would definitely say that it's to keep her from possibly plotting anything else, because if she doesn't know the people who are around her, she's not going to be able to trust them enough to say, okay, yeah, I got this harebrained scheme, follow me on it, because she doesn't know whether or not they're going to pull another fast one on her, because someone in her party before already betrayed her. She has no idea who it was, and she's not going to be willing to take that risk again with a bunch of people that she doesn't know, and someone who might possibly, maybe not necessarily have a grudge, but someone who's going to be like, well, look, I already got turned down for your hand in marriage. I'm not going along with this, because who knows what Dorne could do to me if whatever you're planning goes wrong.
Let's not also forget that he's one of the best swords in all of Dorne, so he's pretty qualified there. least to protect her if needed.
I don't think it's so much as not plotting. I think she's learned her lesson because her last lesson was very harsh. Their heirs died. Myrcella ended without an ear. She was very shocked. She got, locked up. I think it's more in the sense that her friends were very much like her, and sometimes friends are not don't encourage you in the worst ways. Sometimes friends, especially friends that were friends, they were very similar to her. They edged her on, they pushed her, and sometimes friends can be bad influences, and I think that removing all of those other people that encouraged her in ways that she should not be encouraged, it was, it's a good way of creating other people so that she'd be forced to be just, concentrated on a mission and not, not having people that might, drive her on into distraction or getting into other things, putting people that, she's not close to, so she'll be focused solely on the mission. And Daemon is one of the best swords, and since it's that awkwardness is there, it's not someone that she will just feel, relaxed and, fall down to. She's always going to be kind of like on her guard with him, and he will tell her the truth. He tells her everything as it is. She's not someone that is just going to be saying, "Oh yes, as you say, my lady," because she's a princess of Dorne.
He's her Davos.
And do you have anything to add on that, or?
No, I had the same question as T. So
Yeah.
Why you chose them? Before we, if we're going to move on to talking about the town, I just want to show the map quickly that I've prepared.
Okay.
I hope I can. Can you see the map? No.
In the meantime, I want to go back to or mention Thunderclap's comment in the thing. He also said a peregrine is also the fastest bird in the world, so it would make sense to why a ship would be named after that.
Oh, thank you, Thunderclap. Yeah, great comment. Can you now see the map?
Yes.
Okay, so you can see where Whipping Town is. It's that little town at the very south of Cape Wrath. It's right next to the Stone, and it's right across the Sea of Dorne from Ghost Hill that they came from.
Right on. So before we move on to this little section, I did want to bring up, because B-Fish was asking about what we found interesting about the conversations going on or whatever. When they're in the drunken Dornishmen, we get to see kind of how rumors get exaggerated and start flying, about Raymond Connington was essentially killed. The rumors is that Raymond Connington was killed by Jon Connington, and his sister was raped, and Ronnet Connington is on his way to avenge their, the death and her ruining her honor. So it's just interesting to see how these rumors get, exaggerated.
Raped by Jon Connington too.
Yeah, because we've seen Jon Connington's perspective in this regard, and yeah. So yeah, we will move. Or do you have something to say, B-Fish?
Oh no, I think it's interesting how rumors work in the world. But yeah, it's interesting how they go to these different. There's three taverns, or rather inns, in the town itself. So it has to be a relatively large town to have three inns. And they hear all these rumors. One of which, and I'm not sure if I'm going to steal anyone's thunder, and I apologize if I am in advance, but that a certain Sir Adam Whitehead is riding north to join up with Jon Connington with 200 men and boys. If you guys have been in the fandom for long enough, you might know of a certain really cool guy named Adam Whitehead, who is known by Wordhead in the fandom. He's been a moderator at Westeros.org, and he runs two A Song of Ice and Fire, or one A Song of Ice and Fire blog and one just regular blog. And there's a reference to him. Adam Whitehead is an acquaintance of George R. R. Martin's, and is kind of cool to see him enter the pages of the book.
That's cool Easter egg. I imagine that's really awesome for him. I imagine.
That's really cool. I was just really, worried that he was going to kill off his character later.
Well, Adam actually came. He came to Reddit, where I'm a moderator on the Song of Ice and Fire subreddit, and I asked him on there because he did an AMA with us, and I asked him, so you have a character now in the Song of Ice and Fire. How was your character supposed to die, and how would you like your character to die? He says, probably just killed by a collapsing bookshelf of books. So I was like, yeah, I think that seems like a pretty solid death for your character, given your who you are and your kind of interests in both the greater Song of Ice and Fire world as well as the sci-fi and fantasy world.
Yeah, definitely. And remind me, I will put the links to his websites in the description bar so you guys can check it out. Because yeah, he did. I'm not sure if he's finished. He's done an entire series on the history of fantasy, and that is amazing. And that was really long, even longer than Jeff's essay series, and that might be of interest.
Right on. We're going to move on to the.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Ann.
I was just going to say another thing. When they were talking about the great sceptre of the Oath of Man that had been burned and looted by raiders from the sea. And that was pretty shocking for me. Like, we know there's a lot of people looking for new slaves because the Essos slave route is now broken thanks to Daenerys, and so I was wondering who those raiders were, if it could potentially be Aurane Water, Aurane Water, because in Arianne 1 we learned that a new pirate king has set up on Torturous Deep. The Lord of the Waters, he styles himself. This one has real warships, 3-deckers, monstrous, large. So I think that's Aurane Water, and if that was the same person, or if that could be someone else.
Oh, it could be.
I assumed it was the same.
It could be Aurane, but there's also in that same Arianne chapter, the first one, she talks about, I forget who she's talking to, but the person says, there are strange sails on the waters. You have the Pirate King. But you also have, Kraken sigils on the water as well. I think it's more likely that the sceptre that was raided was the Ironborn, potentially Euron Greyjoy, who, my crackpot is that Euron Greyjoy is following Victarion to Meereen, and Victarion also sells slaves in lease on his way to Meereen itself. So I think it's possible that it's Euron Greyjoy who's raiding the Sept. I mean, Euron Greyjoy doesn't give a fuck about the faith of the Seven, or really any faith at all. So I can see him kind of being just a total bastard and raiding this basically this convent. It's very reminiscent of in 7th and 8th century England, how the Norsemen from Norway and Denmark and the Danes would raid monasteries and convents and take all the women or the men off and steal their treasures as well and take it back to Daneland, which became Denmark or Norway.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's interesting, and even if we're whoever is doing that reading, I think it's very interesting to see the ramifications of Daenerys' plot happening in Westeros. That creates that's linked. I mean, I think in the Winds of Winter we're going to see an increase of those skirmish and people raiding to steal people to sell them as slaves to the free cities, just because of what Daenerys has done, I think.
Anyone else have anything to expound upon that, or shall we move on to the next section?
I'm good.
All right, then. Okay. So yeah, this next section, up to the next Raven, we're probably going to talk about this one a little bit. The following day, the party sets off for the long land journey across the Stormlands for Griffin's Roost and Jon Connington. The journey takes them through the beauty of the Rainwood, but when heavy rains fall, they make camp in a dangerous network of caves within the forest. When the rains subside, they set out for Griffin's Roost and stop at Mistwood. There they encounter sellswords led by young John Mudd and Chains, 2 sergeants from the Golden Company. Arianne then sends another Raven. So yes, I know a lot of people want to talk about the caves. I'll let you guys go ahead and take the ship, take the reins at this point.
Well, the caves are interesting because one of the major things about the caves themselves is as they go into the caves, Arianne and Sir Damon Sand are looking at drawings that were carved by the children of the forest, allegedly. One of the things I think is fascinating is there's a potential for a character like Bran or Bloodraven to potentially see what's going on in Arianne's perspective, because you can see through the eyes of the potentially see through the eyes of the children of the forest. One of the things I also want to bring up as well in this is the potential that there's a vast network of caves running from north of the Wall all the way to the Stormlands, and see if you guys had any thoughts about that, and why potentially these caves were, and why maybe even the children of the forest were inside of these caves.
Should I start?
Go ahead, sweet.
No, I don't know. I want T-Baby to say something because I know she has things to say about that, and she's been really quiet.
I did like the caves and the how big they said they were. I think they had like some type of drawings in the cave, and how it kind of, when I thought of caves, I instantly thought of Bran and the Children of Forest, and just how far these caves, because when you think of like the last Bran chapter in Dance, and how these, like, you don't know how far these caves, and even in the Jon chapter with him going through those, it's like the fact that these caves go so far, and that you see, like, it's not like these small things, but they're gigantic. And I think Rainwood had like something with the history of the Green Witch, and how they were describing it as it's built from like the root, they say, or something like that. So I just instantly wanted I wanted them to explore the caves more, and I wanted to hear more about the Children of the Forest. But I know this chapter's not really geared towards that, but I just thought it was interesting how far these caves go. And I'm just curious, like, are we going to see more caves? Like, not just through her perspective, but others. Because I don't know if that's going to play a part towards the end, but I just thought that it was real cool to see all those things.
Yes, I agree. I mean, yeah, it's a little weird in that chapter that we have that description of the cave, but I guess they must be sprinkled a little bit everywhere. Like, I've always had that. Now, don't worry, it's time for the tinfoil hat. I've always had that. Yeah, like, okay. Quick reminder. I'm sorry. I guess most of you know. Before I read the book, I read a lot of Westeros.org, and I read a lot of the infamous heresy threads from Westeros.org, who think that the others are nice and the children of the forest are evil little buggers. But that's not exactly my point of view, but I have to admit that it has influenced my view on those books. And but yeah, I'm getting distracted again. I'm so sorry. But yeah, I think the children of the forest are not just north of the wall. I think they're hiding everywhere in the crypts. I've always in the caves, and I've always like felt that. And since the World of Ice and Fire, when we learn of the, I don't want to butcher the name, Efequedron, something like that. There are creatures on the forest north of the Great Grass Sea, and that look to be very much the same thing as the Children of the Forest, like woodwalkers. I'm like, okay, so we have. To me, I was like, okay, Children of the Forest in Essos confirmed. Bam, they're everywhere. They're biding their time to invade the world and waiting just for men to die out. And when there's I'm sorry, I'm gonna ramble, but that's the only thing I have to say about that chapter. So, when there's a nuclear holocaust and you have or any kind of holocaust and you have survivors, where do people go to hide before they can come out again? Underground. And like I see them as just like there's a big underground network, and I can picture them in my head canon, just hiding in those little caves, just waiting for something to happen. And okay, when I first read that chapter, there was something that right away jumped at me. That was the part. I'm sorry. That was the part about Ilya. Yeah. catching blind fish. Their passageway led down to a still black pool where they discovered the girl up to her waist in water, catching blind white fish with her bare hands, her torch burning red and smoky in the sand where she had planted it. And I don't know why, like those, and that tilt in my head, that it made me think of Gollum's first introduction in in Lord of the Ring and in The Hobbit.
The Hobbit.
Yes, and now can I read a little passage about the cave? Can I read the same passage about the first time Bilbo meets Gollum?
Go for it.
So okay, it's from The Hobbit, and it's when Bilbo is wandering in the goblins' caves. So I'm just gonna there's this big passage. I'm just gonna read you a few sentences. The tunnel seemed to have no end. And then further, it did not know whether it was just a pool in the path or the edge of an underground stream that crossed the passage or the brink of a deep, dark subterranean lake, like the ones that we have in Bran's Cave. But deep down, then later, deep down here by the dark water lived old Gollum, a small, slimy creature. I don't know where he came from, nor who or what he was. He was Gollum, as dark as darkness, except for two big, round, pale eyes in his thin face. He had a little boat, and he rowed about quite quietly on the lake. For lake it was, wide and deep and deadly cold. He paddled it with large feet dangling over the side, but never a ripple did he make. Not he. He was looking out of his pale lamb-like eyes for blind fish, which he grabbed with his long fingers as quick as thinking. So I don't know if that's, again, I know I'm sometimes like imagining things, but I think that passage was an influence. I mean, that passage from the Hobbits was obviously, I mean, not obviously, I think it was an influence for that part of the chapter. What do you guys think?
Well, he's always mentioned that he always loved Tolkien and his books, and that they were a great influence for him for his writings. He has mentioned it. So yeah, why not?
Anyone else? Don Willie, Jerry?
Yeah, I will say that, after hearing that passage just now and then thinking about the introduction of Gollum, yeah, I mean, that definitely seems like a callback, and we know that, not only is George influenced by Tolkien, but there are a couple of other small things that pop up here and there, but just, when you look at the character who Gollum is, like where he came from and what he wound up actually becoming, like, and then just kind of related to the Children of the Forest, these are things that people look at and see as like these kind of almost cuddly, sympathetic creatures, but then at the end, if you look at just the Golem parallel, if we'll go that route, Golem wound up being, a very sadistic and sinister creature, where, when Bilbo first meets him, he's like, oh, well, take pity on him, and then he's like, wait, no, this guy is trying to eat me right now. Like, so, I've said a few times before, I happen to think the children are evil, and
No.
I don't know if we're gonna get anything. Like, I don't think these chapters are gonna give us any actual insight as to what the children are up to, but just in terms of the fact that they have a presence which no one actually really knew before, because no one in the South has even thought about the Children of the Forest being anything other than a myth.
Right.
They hear about them in stories, and maybe your maester might tell you something here and there, but even the maesters were like, oh, yeah, that's just something somebody made up. And now, Arianne sees this and it's like, oh wow, there's actually something here, but she still is not going to have the full context of what it all means, just as we don't have the full context of what it all means, other than, you know what, this means that they were as far south as at least the Reach and Stormlands, and who knows, we might even find something in Dorne later on.
Well,
I refuse to believe that they're evil. I refuse.
You also refuse to believe that Shield is going down, but that's something for another chat.
Yeah.
Well-
This oh, sorry, James.
I was going to say something that would be interesting, speaking of influence, is perhaps if there is this subterranean, if the Child of the Forest have been hiding out in these subterranean cave network for, 7,000 years or so, it'd be interesting to see, like, the effect of the evolution of their race. And it would be like H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, like how the Children of the Forest would evolve into, like, the Morlocks from the Time Machine, like this group of, savage, pale, it'd be interesting to see if something like that occurred. I'm not predicting that it will, or I'm not saying that it's even plausible, but I'm just saying, that'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, and last thing, still in the crackpot, train. That's if I've not reread the entire Hobbit story for that, but if I remember correctly, that's when Bilbo finds the ring. So, does anyone think that maybe Elia found something in the caves? Because she's no, okay, that's the crackpot.
No, I don't think so.
What I think is more interesting than, I don't think she found anything. What I think is more interesting is the part, and we'll talk about this more at the end, about where is it Arianne or was it Ilya who says the word die, and it echoes 3 times, die, 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 sort of in the cave.
Arianne says that. She's like, you could have died if your torch would have went out.
That's what I think is really interesting. I think that it's not so much the ring of Sauron that she's finding there, but she's finding some potential, foreshadowing, so to speak, potentially for Arianne, which we'll talk about more at the end.
Oh,
Or for Elia.
You can talk about it now if you want. That's the right chapter. Next to that, I wrote in my notes, ominous.
Oh yes, it's super ominous the way that George has it. He likes to use those types of literary cues to say, you should maybe, if it's being repeated a couple times, even if it's like an echo, he'll use that in terms of like embedding in the type of foreshadowing that we see potentially for Ilya, as Tinker has it, or for Arianne as well, which I think is going to be a interesting thing that's going to happen potentially in the Winds of Winter, or possibly in A Dream of Spring.
Anything else you guys wanted to expound upon on the caves?
Not in the caves themselves, but I do have one thing that I think was George wrote really, really well, which is on the journey into the cave itself, of how it's this quote. I think this is some of George's best writing, A Song of Ice and Fire, where it says he has Arianne traveling through the rainwood, and he has written, dusk found them on the fringes of the rainwood, a wet green world where brooks and rivers ran through dark forests, and the ground was made of mud and rotting leaves. Huge willows grew along the courses, larger than any that Arianne had ever seen, their great trunks as gnarled and twisted as an old man's face, and festooned with beards of silvery moss. Trees pressed close on every side, shutting out the sun. Hemlock and red cedars, white oaks, soldier pines that stood as tall and straight as towers, colossal sentinels, big leaf maples, redwood, worm trees, even here and there a wild, and this is important, weirwood. It's really cool writing. George gets a lot of criticism for kind of overwriting some of his passages and like the food passages and descriptions of scenery, but this is, to me, it's just awesome writing as well. And I really found the wild werewoods growing in the rainwood to be very fascinating potential venues for a character like we saw in the caves of Bran or Bloodraven to potentially be looking in on what's going on in the outside world, outside of their cave, all the way in the far north.
Yeah, see, I wouldn't be a good writer because I would have been like, Arianne's walking through the forest. Shit is wet. That would have been my summation.
There are a lot of trees. Move on.
Yeah, there's some trees out here, man.
Oh,
But
oh,
And like the
sorry.
stormtroopers, move it along. Move it along.
The
go ahead,
only
Ann.
thing I wanted to add about the whole cages, I think it'd be interesting if they played another role further down, because you know that the White Walkers are coming, and not everyone's going to be. I wonder if people will probably like that might be an escape route or something. Like I just feel like it has to play a bigger role than just to let us know that okay, the children of the forest were here, because in most of these stories they said that they were throughout Westeros and then they got pushed back up. So I wonder if the caves are going to play a bigger role like in the next book.
Maybe, but I also think it kind of shows that the children were a lot of the children were there, and they were also they probably had some role into building up Storm's End, in my opinion. Seeing how Storm's End is pretty magical, so it would make sense to have something children-like around that area.
Sorry, I was wondering if anyone thinks the fact that Davos has been named Lord of the Rainwood, because now we're going to the Rainwood, will that ever play part in the story?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a huge part of Davos's arc in the Winds of Winter because in Arianne's first chapter, it says that Rain House has fallen to the Golden Company, which is a really big and important thing because Davos is all the way up. He's heading off to Skagos in A Dance with Dragons, but he leaves his wife and his younger children behind at his new seat, and that's kind of a big deal because. Is Davos going to have some character conflict in the future because his kids and his wife are being held by the Golden Company, by Jon Connington as hostage? I think that's big. It's also Davos feels incredibly guilty for not being the best husband he could possibly be to Maya, his wife, and so he writes her this letter in A Dance with Dragons right before he's brought in front of or before Ryman Mannerly comes to him, where he basically just says, "I'm sorry. I was a better smuggler when I should have been a better husband," type thing. And then all of a sudden, wow, look at what happens. My wife and kids are now held hostage. They're in danger. Do I go and try and save them, or do I continue to work on behalf of Stannis in the north? I mean, it's kind of a side point to this discussion, but I think it's really interesting that this type of thing also impacts other narratives as well. The other thing as well is that. Tarth apparently is taken by the Golden Company, so you have Brienne, who also is impacted by this as well, and she's off in the Riverlands somewhere. What happens to her? She's going to try to rescue her father from the Golden Company because he's most likely being held hostage by the Golden Company as well. So I mean, there's a lot of different narratives that the Golden Company's invasion of both the Rainwood as well as all the Stormlands has to the main narrative.
That's a great point. I didn't even think about the Davos thing, but yeah, I can definitely see a conflict coming up, and that's just great writing to set up this situation where totally different characters going to have like a conflict of the heart coming up.
I mean, yeah, that is interesting and something I hadn't thought about at all. I mean, I thought about the whole thing with them taking Tarth, but man, this just further complicates things for Davos because I'm pretty sure that he's not aware of this now, and he probably won't be aware of it for a little while. He's off going to Skagos. We have no idea if ravens really pass back and forth between the mainland and Skagos. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see like what happens when he gets that information, and also, what happened. How did the Golden Company take these places? Was it by force? Did they just wind up kneeling to him just because they didn't want to go through the trouble of having, a major battle? We don't know what the circumstances were behind the Golden Company taking these different places.
Well, one thing to keep in mind is that the Golden Company's attacking the Stormlands, and the Stormlands has been significantly impacted by the War of the Five Kings. You know, you have Stannis taking a significant portion of his army north of the Wall, or north to the Wall, rather. And then you have Renly's army, which has mostly been incorporated to Randall Tarley's army now, which is up in Maidenpool. So there's not a whole lot of fighting men left in the Stormlands itself. So you can see how... You know, they talk about in the Griffin Reborn how they were able to take, was it Mistwood or something like that, a place we'll be visiting in a moment here, very easily because, you know, they probably only had like 10 to 15 dudes probably hanging around the castle because everyone else is gone fighting, you know, the various wars and being incorporated in various armies, and their homelands are now under attack by a foreign force. So I think it's very... that potentially answers why or how the Golden Company was able to take these castles much more easily than they really should have.
Yep, like the art of war, you know, divide and conquer, strike them where they're weak.
Yeah.
But
just before we move on, I think Tinker said she wanted to say something about a quote that is in that part. Something about Daenerys. You wanted to say something about young girls dreamed of dashing knights with wicked smiles, not sullen boys who always did their duty.
Yeah, that was me, but
Oh, sorry, James.
It's fine. Yeah, I just thought it was interesting how she kind of has this, you know, she kind of essentially predicts, you know, kind of what happens to Quentyn to an extent, about how, you know, at her age she'll like dashing knights and wicked smiles. Well, of course she does like, you know, a wicked smile by the name of Dario Naharis. And kind of clouds her judgment at times, especially when it comes to Quentyn's plot, because I thought that, you know, she says, you know, of course she'll take Quentyn because he brings her Dorne. So she makes this inference, but of course that's not how things played out.
It's funny, Sweet, because I hadn't mentioned that, but when I was reading, that quote did stand out to me, because I remember having a conversation before of something similar about how she should have taken Quentyn and how she didn't, because she obviously was like she did mention the fact she made the how she thought of the frog that would turn into a prince, because Quentyn kind of looked like a frog, and she does think of Quentyn quite a lot during the chapter. She keeps thinking, where's Quentyn? Has Quentyn married her? Will he be king? Will I have to kneel to him? And she also has a talk with Daemon Sand, saying that, you know, even if they didn't get along, that he's her brother and that he loves it. And I don't think Arianne is going to be very happy when she figures out that he got burned by a dragon. Even if it wasn't Daenerys' fault directly, I don't think that's going to matter to her.
I think she'll actually be a little bit relieved if she finds out that Quentyn is dead, to be honest, because... you know, as awful as it sounds, like she's very she thinks that Quentyn is trying to steal her birthright for the entirety of her Feast for Crows arc, and she still is thinking about Quentyn. She's still like coming up with these things like, do I have to kneel to Quentyn? Like King Quentyn, that sounds weird. There's a certain amount of jealousy that goes into it, where she thinks that Quentyn Martell is stealing her birthright. And there's the potential now that, like, oh, well, you know, he might not be stealing my birthright, but, you know, he's going to take a more exalted position as King of Westeros, you know, King Quentyn, which does factor in both Arianne's first chapter, but here as well, where she's talking about the ways that that Quentyn, the weirdness. Like, there's a weird part of, like, her dialogue in this chapter where she's really, I don't know. I think she'd be kind of relieved if she found out that Quentyn was dead. She doesn't like her brother a whole lot. She barely knows him, for that matter, because he's been at Ironwood or with Lord Ironwood for the entirety.
That's so cynical. I think deep down, when she figures out that her brother is dead, that will matter more than any of the other threatening things. After all, the Dornish stick together and are close together, and I think that when it comes down to it, when she realizes that he's dead, she's gonna be angry. She's gonna be pissed. Yeah. And if he's dead, he's no longer a threat, anything. So the jealousy, she won't be feeling the jealousy. She'll only be feeling the fact that her brother's not there anymore.
I think, if I can, just real quickly, look, you got to think about it like this. Quentin's companions are being sent back to Dorne right now, right? So I'm pretty sure, once they find out not only that Quentin has been killed, and forget about that he got killed by the dragon, right? They're going to be pissed off, that he went to them with, the marriage proposal from Dorne to, help her take back the Seven Kingdoms. And not only did she turn them down, but then after that, Quentin gets killed. Right now, it's Quentin's own fault that it happened. But, when these guys tell the story, I'm pretty sure they're going to throw in the fact that Daenerys totally, talked a whole bunch of shit about him, too. Like, yeah, okay, we went there, and she kind of, played him and told him that he didn't really look too good. So, I think they're going to wind up back in Aegon, at least for a little while especially after hearing that.
Yeah. I'm not going to say, that I think Arianne would be doing jumping jacks and dancing, or, dancing the night away if she found out Quentin died, but I do think that she has a little bit of a selfish streak in her, a little bit of selfishness and jealousy, we'll say, to be the center of Dornish, in particular of her father's attention, I think. Just a little hint of that.
I mean, but think about it like this. Sorry to interrupt, but I was going to say, think about it like this. Now, she has the potential to become queen of all Westeros, because I'm pretty sure, even though Aegon is younger than her, she's like, oh, well, Quentin's dead. Daenerys obviously is not coming back to Westeros. Maybe my father will try to get me to marry Aegon instead.
Yes, but Aegon wants to marry Dany because Dany has dragons, and Dany will eventually come over, and the plan was for Aegon to marry Dany. So that is going to create another conflict, because if Arianne and Dorne are thinking of that alliance, and then Dany comes and Aegon thinks to marry Dany after Dany rejected Quentin and then let him die, that's going to cause a conflict.
It's going to cause a conflict.
Dany's already married.
Yes. So Daenerys is, remember, she turned down Quentin not only because she was like, yeah, you know what, this guy's kind of nerdy looking anyway, but she was like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I'm already getting married. So
oh please, he's not gonna live for long. He's gonna be dead He's gonna be dead before she leaves for Westeros. I mean, does anyone has any doubt about that?
No, like I don't doubt that, but think about it though. Remember, the two guys that went with Quentin, and I'm sorry I forget their names right now, but when they come back, they're gonna remember, like, the story that they're gonna tell is, we went there with your proposal, and Daenerys turned us down and said that she's marrying somebody else. Quentin wanted to bring home a dragon and show that he was worthy of this mission, and he got killed by one of Daenerys' dragons.
Yeah.
Also remember that Aegon's going to hear that she got married first before she comes back. So he's gonna move forward with the assumption she's already married. So
yeah, because listen, Tyrion put the battery in that man's back. Tyrion put the battery in his back. He's got a Duracell, an Energizer, and whatever, ever ready, all that, because he's made a lot of decisions just based off of the fact that Tyrion told him, well, why do you need to wait for Daenerys? If you wanted to become king, go be king.
Also, going back to Arianne, another thing about her though, she is very Dornish proud. She has a lot of pride, like Dornish pride, real pride. She's real prideful of Dorne. And what Dany did basically is like a slap in the face to Dorne when she rejected Quentin, and then him getting crispied. It was even added to that. So she's gonna be like Dorne. She's gonna be pissed for Dorne on that.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you on that. As far as, I think that she doesn't really have ill will towards her brother anymore, because she knows that she's the heir, not him. I think when she says, am I going to have to call him king? I think if anyone has brothers and sisters, like if your brother was president, I'm pretty sure you'd be like, do I really have to call you president this or something? So I got like, that's my brother. Do I really have to call you king or Neil? Like, I got that type of vibe. But as far as like Aegon, I think the plan is that they should marry. I don't see why Dorne's going to go through all of this and risk all of that and not want the crown. It's too much of a risk. It doesn't make sense based off of how Dorne is.
Well, the interesting thing about Aegon himself is that he's been told he has to marry Daenerys Targaryen by Jon Connington, but by the time they reach Westeros, Jon Connington thinks that Aegon's become a lot more headstrong. He's talking about, Jon Connington's talking to Howland Halfmaester about potential marriage alliances, and he says, well, Aegon's not up for being married off because he's scheduled to be married to Daenerys. The problem is that Aegon, one, Jon Connington might not live forever. He has grayscale. He could die at any point in time. And then secondly, Aegon has become a lot more headstrong and starting to make decisions that Jon Connington is like, well, I don't really have a lot of control over this kid anymore the way that I used to. The thing about King Quentyn from this part of the chapter is that Arianne is referencing this, and I think this is providing the backing for what Arianne is going to do, because if she finds out that she's still going to be a subordinate role to Quentyn, even though she is the elder to Quentyn, because in A Feast for Crows and the Queenmaker, she's looking up in the stars and she says, Quentyn, are you looking up at these same stars? And then she says, you will not steal my birthright. So she has her birthright back from Dorne because Dorne has explained the plan to her, but she's still subordinate to Quentyn if Quentyn becomes the king, which he's not because he's dead, absolutely 100% objectively dead in A Dance with Dragons. But if the opportunity presents itself that Arianne could become the queen of Westeros with Aegon as her consort, then that's going to be a pretty significant thing that she might do. She might try and marry Aegon with or without her father's consent.
But do you think that Dorne's going to make it past the next book? Because now he's kind of like really sick. He's got hoarse all the time. He can barely move. Like, what's to say that if he doesn't make it, then it falls on her. She's the one that makes the decision for Dorne. So it goes back to, what does she really want?
I mean, look, at the end of the day, remember, she was so obsessed with trying to rule Dorne that she wanted, that she made this plot because she thought that she wasn't going to rule Dorne. So if the opportunity dropped in her lap now to say, forget about just being Princess of Dorne, I get to be Queen of all Westeros. And think about it, she already has used her, her feminine charms on other guys. It's like, oh, you know what? This dude is way younger. I'm still hot. I get to tell him, what to do right now. Cool. Oh, listen. Come take Westeros. I'll march all the Dornish armies. We'll come in and bowl this whole thing over. Make me your queen. Daenerys didn't want you anyway. Daenerys is married in Essos right now. Forget about her and her dragons, and let's get this done.
Right on. Anyone have any other thoughts on this whole situation, or shall we move on to the third Raven?
Third Raven.
Right on. All right. So Chains decides to escort Arianne's company as they depart Mistwood when he lets slip that Jon Connington lets Haldon Halfmaester in charge of his former seat and was marching for Storm's End. Arianne obviously dispatches her third Raven after this revelation. So, what do you guys think? First off, of to me, that's kind of like a trope where you have because there's Mud and Chains, which first off kind of sounds like a hip hop group. But that being said, Mud is kind of the he's kind of the straight man. He's maybe a little bit more wise and intelligent. Where you have, and then you have the trope of kind of the dumb one, where if you kind of divide and separate him, he's obviously going to spill all the beans. So yeah, what's your guys' opinions of Chains and Mud and the impending march onto Storm's End?
Oh, sorry. I thought we were stopping a little bit earlier. What?
So,
Yeah, I misplaced my ravens. Also, like first look at Griffin's root. That was pretty interesting. To see that castle. What did you? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you discuss that and while I was away?
Well,
uh,
they go to Mistwood first before they go to Griffin's Roost, and then they meet up with Chains and Mud at Griffin's Roost. If I'm, so they meet up with the lady too, Lady Merton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
uh,
Um,
well, first off, I'd like to say that I would not listen to any hip hop group named Chains and Mud or Mud and Chains. Uh, so, but aside from that, yeah, it's funny because you have one of them who's spilling all the secrets, and then the other one who's saying absolutely nothing. And now she's on her way there and is trying to figure out, like, okay, well, what are these guys really planning? And also, remember, they're still trying to figure out whether this is really Jon Connington and Aegon. And the more that they hear about them marching and winning these different places, I think the more she's starting to believe, you know what, this could actually be for real. Because you're not thinking about the fact that, no, like, most of these castles are damn near barren. There's no garrison there. You don't have the large armies because most of them have already marched off with Stannis. But all we're gonna hear from this is, oh yeah, we took this castle, we took this castle, we got these lords to join us, and we're going to take another castle. Oh, and by the way, we're going to take the big castle now, right? And it's just one of those things where if she didn't believe before, she had doubts. Now this is starting to become the point where now she's starting to have a lot less doubt and starting to believe that what she's been told could actually be a real thing, and it's starting to pique her interest. Whereas before it was like, yeah, all right, I'm going to do this because my dad told me to. Because remember, in the first couple of parts of the chapter, it was all about this feigned boy, this pretender. And this is around the time where, if you notice, she really isn't using those words as much. No, not only because she's running into some of Aegon and Connington's men, but again, after days or weeks worth of travel, now it's starting to seem like, well, you know what? Maybe these guys aren't just some pretenders from across the narrow sea trying to see if they can win something that doesn't really belong to them. Now it seems like, you know what? No, these guys are doing the things that they should be doing if they are the people they say they are. So I think that's possibly the most interesting part of this particular section of the chapter.
I mean, it's part and
Anyone
parcel.
else?
It's part and parcel of Jon Connington, of Aegon and Jon Connington's plan. They want to take swift strikes in order to take castles and then to present themselves as victors, because the Stormlands has a reputation and a history in the 5 books of being totally bellwether, not being totally bellwether, but rather being shifting to the strongest side in the war. The first they were for Renly, and then when Renly died, they joined Stannis, and then when Stannis was defeated at Blackwater, they joined up with Tywin Lannister and the Tyrells. And then now you have yet another claimant coming in who's demonstrating that he's like really, really good at taking castles, taking these really important castles like Mistwood and Griffin's Roost and Tarth and Rainhouse and these different types of castles, and that's really huge. It's a huge propaganda victory for the Golden Company and for Aegon, because she is doubting that it's Jon Connington. And if you're like me and you believe the Blackfire theory about Aegon, the evidence that Aegon is going to actually be the son of Rhaegar Targaryen, at least among the Westerosi, is that, here's Connington, and it's definitely Connington. There's no doubt that this dude here is the exiled Lord Jon Connington coming back. So why couldn't it be that it's Aegon, the son of Rhaegar Targaryen, coming in? The interesting thing I found about the two sergeants, Chains and Mud, was that they both have the young John Chains. There's a young John Mudd. Which one is it? Young John Mudd?
John Mudd.
Yeah, so he's young John Mudd because his father, old John Mudd, was a Golden Company sellsword that had impregnated a camp follower. So there's a history of these guys, and that the other guy as well, Chains, was his great-grandsire who fought in the first Blackfire Rebellion, or rode with Daemon Blackfire. So you have a history of these guys in the Golden Company extending back to the first Blackfire Rebellion, which happens in the Battle of Raygrass Field is in 212, or is it just right after 200? About 100 years before the start of the events from the series. So there's a history there. There's a history there which speaks to the Golden Company as a little bit of a different type of sellsword company than the ones we've been exposed to, and different in terms that they have an ideological purpose, which is to seat the Blackfires onto their stolen throne that was stolen by the Targaryens.
So yeah, like what you brought up with them, why Jon Connington is going to go take Storm's End. It's like it's like sports. It's like bandwagon fans in sports. Everybody loves a winner. It's essentially showing the power and who wants to, how you want to be on the winning side essentially. Tink, it sounds like you want to say something.
Yes, it's just that I also think that it has another significance because it was Robert Baratheon who essentially defeated the Targaryens and who took over the throne. And Storm's End is their ancestral home, and they took the Seven Kingdoms, they took Dragonstone, so taking Storm's End would be like taking the seat of House Baratheon, the same way that the Baratheons took the Seven Kingdoms and took King's Landing and the Iron Throne, which it was the Targaryen's own seat. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, you took it. Well, now that I'm taking back, the Seven Kingdoms, I'm gonna start by taking the Baratheons' ancestral home, which are the ones that kicked us out. I think it has another greater significance to taking Storm's End.
Well, it's even bigger than that. Storm's End has never fallen by force of arms before. So it's basically, James will like this. It'd be like if the Detroit Lions defeated the Patriots at their home field. It's huge. I mean, because you're taking the Baratheon seat, which has never been taken by force of arms, and they're marching against it right now. The Detroit Lions being. It looks like James has something to say.
Did you say that knowing I'm a Detroit Lions fan?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, listen.
I would say.
I'm not even a Lions fan, and I would love to see that happen.
Hey, well, the Lions beat the Packers at Lambeau Field this year for the first time in 18 years, so it is like that actually happening.
But no, it's huge though. I mean, if you think about it, like there's to kind of just go off Tinker's point just one more time, like Storm's End is this impregnable fortress. Mace Tyrell besieges it twice and never takes it, never has a chance of taking it. But then Jon Connington is marching up against it. With the Golden Company, with a much smaller force than what Mace Tyrell has. And, at the end of the chapter, we find something out very interesting about the Castle of Storm's End and what happens with that. But I'll leave that discussion for then. But it's huge. It's a huge propaganda victory. And it adds to Don's point about James' point about the bandwagon effect of folks that are, lords and are going to say, hey, look, these guys are kicking ass, and they're also the Stormlands doesn't really love the Lannisters at all. I mean, if you think about it, they all are pretty sure about the bastardy of Cersei's children. Stannis is not very popular in the Stormlands as well. He's a cold man according to himself, and he doesn't gain the loyalty of the Stormlords. But now you have this guy who presents a third option between the Lannisters who are hated and Stannis who isn't really liked at all. So he's doing good, doing good, so to speak, in the on the field of battle so far.
Yeah, and also what's helping is that Aegon really, like you can see, well, you cannot obviously see in that chapter because we don't see Aegon in that chapter, but he believes so much, like it's so reminiscent of some of the Blackfire things from we've read. He believes so much that his cause is right, and he believes so much that people will rally to his cause. Like, oh yeah, like let's make it, let's do it, and people will come. And that's part of the whole. Sorry, I have neighbor. My upstairs neighbor is always making some noise. That's part of the whole mentality of that conquest. Like let's like move forward like a bulldozer, and things will just happen naturally.
I also had a question because reading, that thought that the princesses has, about how Storm's End, lots of people thought that it was the most impregnable, but she also mentions 3 other castles: Winterfell, that has already been taken, and the Eyrie and Casterly Rock. If Storm's End is going to be taken, and, well, technically they've left the Eyrie, but do you guys think that Casterly Rock will be the next castle of those impregnable castles that is going to be taken? Because technically, both in the Eyrie and Casterly Rock, the war has never gotten there. Even with Robb, etc., he never actually got to Casterly Rock or ever got even close to start attacking, even if it was the plan.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. Who would be attacking Casterly Rock right now? Potentially the Ironborn?
Tyrion.
Okay, go ahead.
Tyrion was Tyrion the plumber, baby. Like he's Tyrion did all the plumbing for Casterly Rock, so he knows all the ways in and out of the castle. So when he comes with Daenerys Targaryen, perhaps he'll infiltrate Casterly Rock as or send whatever Dany the Unsullied through the sewers yet again, because the Unsullied have this sort of reputation of marching through these terrible, horrible sewers, marching through shit essentially to get to the place that they need to attack, so they can go through that way. I think Casterly Rock, but also Tinker, to your point about the Vale of Arryn is also in danger as well. The Eyrie, if you remember from Aegon's conquest, was taken because of was it Visenya or Rhaenyra who had the dragon that flew to the top of the Eyrie, and basically Visenya, who compelled the surrender of the Lord Arryn. You have this story of the Arryn's mother walking out and seeing Visenya chatting with this boy on top of a dragon, type thing, and so I mean that's in danger of falling as well. I think that is a really important and fascinating point too, is that you have all these impregnable fortresses that are in danger of falling. Winterfell has fallen already to Ramsay Snow, and potentially it could fall to Stannis again in the Winds of Winter. Disregard the show, and in this case, so I think that's kind of a really cool thing, is that you have all these places that are very defensible, and everybody never been taken by force of arms are suddenly being taken by force of arms. Storm's End, Winterfell, the Eyrie, and Casterly Rock.
Jerry, Don, Willie, anything to add? T?
No, not really.
All
right, so shall we-
Westeros history. Hey, hey guys.
Hello. Okay, so shall we move on to the next Raven then?
Yeah. Let me show the map quickly. Up.
Okay.
So, of course, if I'm not clicking on the right thing, so everyone can see where they are. Okay, so they're in Mistwood, and and making their way to Griffin's Roost through. Well, on the map, the Rainwood is here, but they're, like according to the chapter, it seems like Mistwood is in the middle of the Rainwood in the chapter. But yeah, they're gonna cross the Rainwood again, and sorry, you can go ahead, James.
All right. So the next Raven here. Okay, on the 4th day of their journey from Mistwood, Arianne and her party encounter another detachment of Golden Company sellswords, led by the company's glib master of whispers, Lysano Mar. Arianne finds Lysano uncomfortable to look at and asks why Dorne should support Aegon's claim over Daenerys. Lysano also tells her that they're here when Daenerys is not. she sends her fourth raven. So yeah, I don't know about you guys, but when I imagined Lysona Mar, like I got this silver-haired, blondish Captain Jack Sparrow. What about you guys?
Yeah, I imagine him like another kind of Dario, that too like over the top. I have a hard time with a hard time. George description of exoticism in his characters, like Xaro, was it Xaro's own Daxos, who also had like rubies in his nose, or am I mixing that up?
No, you got that's right. Those are
Yeah,
Doxos.
yeah, it's very quickly very over the top. Like it could be one of those guys from the movie 300.
Yeah, like Xerxes.
Versions.
Yeah, well, yeah. I've not watched it in a while, but yeah, with all the jewelry and the like over the top. I don't know. I mean, it seems so weird to me. Like if you're a warrior, you're not gonna spend that much time on your jewelry. That
Hmm.
it's like in the movie when you have the girls running in action scenes with like those high heels like that. Like that's a like
Jurassic World.
when
No woman believes that because it's impossible.
yeah, when you're fighting a war, you don't really have time to worry about your makeup or your jewelry or painting your nails. Like Lisa Namara has painted nails right now. I'm confused. I think it was mentioned somewhere that he has painted nails, but I could be wrong.
Um, Jerry had something he wanted to bring up right at this point with Lysina Mar.
Oh, I just thought it was interesting that she was when she meets the Cinemar, she talks about like how uncomfortable with how he looks. She's obviously thinking it like if Viserys looked like that. So I just thought that was interesting to note because that means she's been thinking about what it would have been like to have married Viserys and to have been queen of Westeros. I think there might be a little bit of foreshadowing later because I believe that she will try and marry Aegon and try and do that again.
Well, it's interesting because she finds Lysono so uncomfortable to look at. And the reason why I think that she finds him so uncomfortable is that he's artificial, so to speak. He's made up. He looks like a woman, not like and not to like get like into like a discussion of what a man or woman should look like, but to her mind, to her POV perspective, he doesn't look like the way a guy should look like. And I think she's sensing something artificial about Lysono Mar. His piercings, his painted nails, all of these types of things, which I think are calling potentially to the fact that there's something artificial about Aegon, and about Aegon as a Targaryen. And is he actually a Targaryen? Probably not. There's a potential that way as well. I actually had an interesting, maybe not interesting, but my own little crackpot tinfoil about Lysono, that he's a potential descendant of Bloodraven, possibly as a spy master, Valyrian spy master in the Golden Company or something like that, because Bloodraven was the Master Whispers for Darren and before becoming Hand of the King. I'm not saying that I don't believe it. I just thought it was kind of an interesting connection that these two Valyrian dudes were spy masters for their respective Targaryens.
I mean, well, it's kind of interesting what she thinks about him, because she's kind of worried to a certain extent that maybe other people won't get on board if Aegon happens to look like this guy, right? Because as soon as she sees him, she's like, all right, well, he doesn't look like what I think a warrior should look like. And it's like, oh, well, like when they have their back and forth discussion, and she's like, well, yeah, well, what about the the women of Targaryen family? She's like, oh, well, yeah, they look beautiful, and then he was like, yeah, but the men look more beautiful. And it's just one of those things where she's probably thinking, look, you know what? I don't need someone. I don't really feel like following someone who's going to be vain. If you're gonna be a warrior, be a warrior. if you're gonna be, the person who's staring in the mirror all day talking about, I need to make sure my hair and makeup look cool, then that just doesn't seem like the kind of person that Arianne wants to be involved with. And I had totally forgotten about the fact that she was supposed to marry Viserys and be queen. So yeah, I mean, definitely she would jump on a chance to become queen, but she might hesitate if Aegon looks anything like the guy that she ran into, because she's thinking about how Valerian this guy looks, but also the fact that he looks so over the top.
Yeah, I think it's more of the over the top that really bothers her. Not so much the Valerian. I mean, Douchestar kind of had some Valerian type features, and she was all up about him. So I think she'll see Aegon more the way she sees Douchestar.
I think it's really based off his demeanor. I think part of the text said something about like he knew how to say a lot about nothing, and even before that she was questioning could she deal with Connington because he doesn't seem to be easily swayed, and I think she's getting the same sense for him. So I think that it's not really about much of how he looks, but his demeanor, how he seems sneaky to her. And when they said something about the way, like, he had eyes, he had smiled, but his eyes weren't smiling or something in that nature, it kind of, the only time I read something like that was when Sansa was thinking of Littlefinger. So I think she knows that this guy's not going to give her much information. Possibly he could be, to me it just seems like she gets the vibe that he's sneaky and he can't be trusted.
I don't know. She was trying to get information from him, and she knew that she failed on that. So when she was talking about how he talks about a lot without saying nothing, she was referring more to how well this guy conceals information.
Right. I mean, she's going to try it anyway, but I'm saying I think that's based off of how she's talking to him. He's not giving her information. I mean, you would think if you get sent a letter to come join us, why aren't you exchanging something so that we can figure it out together? He's not doing that.
Does anyone else have anything to add on the Lysonomar situation and his request for her, trying to persuade her to back Aegon as opposed to Daenerys? Anyone else?
No, I mean, he's introduced as a very minor character in Dance with Dragons, and he's very effective at his job too. He's the guy that tells Aegon back in the Lost Lord that the Volantis is not going to support sending them to Meereen unless they go as a sellsword company on behalf of Yunkai. So he's obviously read in on the situation. Lysono is also interesting too because, and this, correct me if I'm wrong, but in terms of sellsword companies, I don't think there's spy masters in like the Windblown or the Second Sons or any of these other types of companies. So it's very interesting that the Golden Company has this guy whose whole job is intelligence collection, which is a very key part of planning for battles as well as planning for the political situation that Aegon is going to be encountering as he approaches Storm's End and then possibly King's Landing after that.
I mean, well, remember, the Golden Company were started by Westerosi, so that's just probably a thing that they picked up from their political system that, they figured, what, if we're going to be over here, we still need to operate the way that we would have if we were in Westeros, because their whole thing was to go back to Westeros. So I just think that was something that they, part of their tradition that they brought with them and they kept, and that's part of the reason why they've also won just about every encounter that they've come across, because that's the one advantage that probably puts them above everyone else. Not only do they have people who've been training, since they were children and have been around for generations, so they're kind of binded to this cause, but also it's like, what? Yeah, we take the time to gather the information about our enemies that our enemies aren't even aware of or even thinking about. So Yeah, it seems out of place for a sellsword company because every other sellsword company is founded by, for the most part, by people who were from Essos and not from Westeros.
Yeah, I was thinking, well, two things. Lysinomar, the way he looks like that is so special. Like it could be the way Varys when he's at court, like is has a very special look, always perfume and speaks in a very distinctive way. Um, that makes him so easy to then disguise into something else. Maybe Lysinomar does the same thing. Maybe like he changes his hair and takes up the jewelry, and then he looks very inconspicuous. Um,
That's a good point. I agree.
But also, I was, I was thinking, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's pretty much Illyrio that pays the money for the Golden Company, right?
Well, Illyrio is paying off one of the Triarchs as they're approaching Volantis. The thing about Illyrio is that he says, to Tyrion that some contracts are written blood, or rather, some contracts are written gold, some contracts are written blood. I say no more. I don't think that he's actually paying the Golden Company because they're operating on a older contract, namely the contract to seat a descendant of Daemon Blackfyre onto the Iron Throne.
Yep, agree.
But okay, my question was, we like there's a lot of that already in the Griffin Reborn, but Illyrio plan at that point is to get, was to get Aegon to go to meet Dany, to marry her, and then they both invade Westeros. Aegon decides otherwise, me like, yeah, no, I'm gonna Tyrion convinced me, like, let's go and invade now. So now why? But I'm thinking they're still supposed to follow, the hand who pays them, like Illyrio and Varys' plan. So now, like Senomar, pretty much like telling Dany, oh no, telling Arianne back, Aegon, don't back Dany, as if they were opposed. I mean, I don't know, I found that weird.
Well, the greater point is that Jon Connington really needs Dorne to enter into the side of Aegon because right now they have 10,000 soldiers. That's the entire strength of the Golden Company, and they're not even massed at the same location. They're all over the Stormlands and the Stepstones is where the Volantines landed them. So he needs the Dornish, in particular Dorne Martell, to fully back his cause because he has, Dorne Martell actually has two armies that are pre-positioned in the Boneway and the Prince's Pass to support Aegon or support the Iron Throne, whatever it was, whatever they decide, rather. And he needs these armies to back their side. So that's the military side. On the political side, if Jon Connington can bring Dorne Martell and Dorne into the fold of Aegon, it's a major political coup because it says to Westeros, look, there is a Lord Paramount, even though he's technically the Prince of Dorne, he's a Lord Paramount, who is backing this dragon. He's backing Aegon, and they need Dorne. They need Dorne right now. They don't need... Daenerys is not coming anytime soon, or so they suspect, and they need the swords that Dorne and the swords and spears that Dorne can provide, as well as the political grandeur or the weight that Dorne Martell can throw behind Aegon that will then convince other lords to back his cause.
Not only that, Dorne was Elia's brother. So technically they're family, so people, if they see that Dorne is backing Aegon, it would be like another way of saying, hey, this family believe that he's Aegon. It's kind of like another way of making others believe that he's the real Aegon, because they would maybe think that maybe somehow Dorne had found a way to rescue his own nephew, which it would make sense that they would have tried to rescue baby Aegon. So if it's backing him, it backs him, who they're pretending for him. I would really like it to be the real Aegon. Right now, I can honestly say that the chances are very, very small.
No,
but
no,
I would like
sorry.
it to be. but I would understand that that would give more credence to the fact that he's Aegon Targaryen if his own uncle and his mother's people are backing him.
No,
Because if Dorne doesn't backing and Dorne doesn't backing, no one is going to believe that he's the real Aegon. No one's going to believe that his own family and the country of his mother is not backing him. No one's going to believe that he's the real Aegon.
I know. I totally agree with you. My question was more the way it was phrased. Instead of being back Aegon and then he's coming, like back both of them. Like that what they're telling her is sort of opposing them. Like, okay, I'm sorry, I was looking for the quote. Whoop, 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 whoop. I'm sorry, I can't find the exact quote.
Well, I have a quote from Tristan Rivers.
Oh, I'm sorry. Prince Aegon is your own blood, princess of Rhaegar. Yeah. Daenerys is our blood as well, daughter of King Aerys. Where is she? Alpha World, away in Slaver's Base at Lyson Omar. Okay, wouldn't make more sense for Lyson Omar if you want to rally Dorne, to say she's coming. We're here right now, but she's coming. But decide right now that you're going to be part of that big winning plan. Remember, Arianne keeps on, reflecting to Dorne, telling her, choose your alliances carefully and only back people we think might win. Well, if you tell Arianne, the guy is here right now. You see, he's already conquering thing. He landed early because the land was ripe for taking, like he said. But then he's following. It was just, she just needed to settle a couple things. She's arriving. She's right behind. That would, that would be more enticing for Dorne Arianne to join than telling her, oh yeah, no, but back our Aegon. Like Dany wouldn't know what she's doing. She doesn't know. He could tell her that.
But maybe they don't want to. Maybe they don't want the Dorne to risk waiting. Maybe they're like, oh well, if she's coming, we'll wait until she comes to join you when it's more certain.
Yeah, but you could say but we need your alliances now. We need you to agree now.
Go ahead, Don Willie, and then I want to read a quote after you.
Yeah. Look. Well, again, I take it back to A Dance with Dragons, and just the whole thing that happened with Quentin. Now they may not know what happened with Quentin as of yet, but when they find out, and also they find out that Daenerys really has no interest in leaving, it's not really going to bode well for Lyson Omar to kind of lie and say that Daenerys is on her way, and he has absolutely no idea, if she's coming or not. So for him, it's just like, look, you know what? We're here. We're already in the middle of this, doing what needs to be done right now. Look, Daenerys is over there. We don't have time to sit around and wait for her. We got to strike while the iron is hot. And I think that's his main argument for trying to get her to come to their side. It's not about trying to disinherit Daenerys or anything like that. It's more so like, look, you know what? We had a plan. Daenerys was supposed to be here, part of this thing, and she's still fucking around in Essos right now, but we can't. So since we're here, let's get this thing going right now.
I agree, but also I think through this conversation is that he let slip up that they're not really communicating with Dany, because that's really, I think, why she's questioning, well, what about Dany and this, because she wants to know exactly where her brother is, but she can't exactly say, well, where's Dany and my brother, because they might not know. I don't know if it was this chapter or the Arianne 1 chapter where she was she questions, she has to keep quiet about certain things because she doesn't know if they know about this mission where her brother went to Dany. So I think what she got out of this was that they're not really working with Dany, because because I think he says, I'd rather have an elephant that I can see and touch than a whisper of a dragon. And it based off of the way he said it, it seemed like he's saying, like, I haven't seen this dragon. These are just, you know, rumors going around here. But if he wanted to persuade, he should say, well, you know, we're working with her or something. He doesn't say anything to indicate that. He's like, why don't you focus the Targaryen you have here, not the one across the world? That's it.
All right. I wanted to read going back to Anne's talk about the Golden Company. I just wanted to read a quick quote from Tristan Rivers. And it was like, which plan? The fat man's plan, the one that changes every time the moon turns. First, Viserys Targaryen wants to join us with 50,000 Dothraki screamers at his back. Then the beggar king was dead, and it was to be his sister, a pliable young child queen who was on her way to Pentos with 3 new hatched dragons. Instead, the girl turns up on Slaver's Bay and ends up a string of burning cities in her wake, and the fat man decides we should meet her by Volantis. Now that plan is in ruins as well. I have had enough of Illyrio's plans. Robert Baratheon won the Iron Throne without the benefit of the dragons. We can do the same.
Yeah.
So, I found that interesting.
No, that was a great quote. Okay, so I think
All right.
we're gonna, yeah.
Yeah. We shall move on to the last part of this chapter. And it goes like this. When the party finally arrives at Griffin's Roost, Half-Maester Haldon brings shocking news. Jon Connington and Aegon have taken Storm's End. Unfortunately, a Tyrell army is descending on Storm's End to retake the castle. Haldon invites Arianne to take ship up to Storm's End because the lands in between were too swampy or muddy or whatever. Later that night, Arianne's companion and former lover, Daemon Sand, tries to convince Arianne to go back to Dorne since neither Quentyn nor Daenerys and her dragons are with Aegon and the Golden Company, but Arianne decides she must see for herself. So, first question I wanted to ask is, like, we can look back to, like, you know, Balon Swan's plan with trying to get Trystane and all them onto a different path. Do you see any kind of sinister ulterior motives with Half-Meister trying to make them go, you know, a different plan, or not? Just the way it is.
I see it just the way it is. Go ahead, Ann.
No. Oh, we lost Jeff. I was rethinking. Okay, it's in Arianne 1 that she reads the letter that was sent by Jon Connington that really moves her, and is sort of her like motivation for that journey. And rereading one of Jon Conn's chapters, I forgot which one. It seems like it's actually Haldon who wrote the letter. We don't know if Jon Connington. I'm sorry. I get confused so easily. So we don't know if he gave him a draft of the letter. But I think when I read that, I thought, oh, okay, he might be playing something there. That was not clear. I can see on your face that was not clear. I'm agreeing with you, James.
Well, look, if anything, I think the reason why the Half-Maester wants them to go to Storm's End is because you got the Tyrell army that's coming, and Arianne still hasn't 100% signed on yet. So I think he's like, look, all right, she obviously needs to see Aegon and Jon Connington for her to believe and get Dorne to commit. It was like, you know what? Come along. And she was like, oh, yeah, all right, we'll take the roads. He's like, nah, take a ship. We can get you there in half a day because he wants to get her there as soon as possible so she can send off a raven to her father saying, yes, this is Aegon. This is really Jon Connington. You know, send the army because the Tyrell forces are going to come to try to take back Storm's End.
Also, it might be another way to force Dorne to join, because if they have her there in Storm's End with the entire army, she could technically be a hostage. Or if the Tyrells figure out, tell the Lannisters, then they would assume that Dorne is in the other side. So technically, as long as they have Arianne there, they have some leverage with Dorne. So if they really get into a difficult position, they've got her there, his heir, to really pull some strings.
Except if she gets killed, then Dorne is going to turn against them and they have nothing.
Well, but they're very confident. There's, how you see in the conversation, they have absolutely no doubt that they're going to win.
I agree, but like, okay, maybe they win and it's not a problem. It's just like he tells her take a ship there. We've just seen that there were a bunch of pirates raiding the sea and that the seas were not safe at all. Her ship could be attacked, by a pirate ship and she could die that way. I mean, I don't know. It's just like that's their, safest ally. Why would you want to endanger her?
Because ego and pride sometimes don't think rationally.
I mean, I think they're just trying to keep her there. I think that, I don't know, if you ever tried to have you ever gone to a dealership to buy a car, they don't want you to leave the lot because, and her leaving would be like leaving the lot. They want to, close on the sale. They want to get they want to get this agreement done. So they want to keep those lines of communication open. They don't want to risk her leaving and then something goes wrong that they can't, anything could happen, really. Anything unpredictable could happen. So, yeah, they want to close this alliance. They want to close this deal. And they're pretty confident in keeping that Storm's End. I mean, they have to be. They're trying to take the Iron Throne. You can't expect to take the Iron Throne and then, get beat at, take Storm's End and lose it. If they lose Storm's End, that's it for them.
And to be fair, how many times have the Tyrell tried to take Storm's End and failed? I mean,
well,
seriously, by now there should be absolutely no faith that Tyrell can actually take Storm's End.
Especially since Randall Tarley might be up to no good, but yeah.
So let's see what else happened in this this chapter here. We could talk about the conversation between Daemon Sand and Arianne. Do you think that she should have heeded his warning, or kind of listened to his logic? The fact that she is only going to be there with 6 people as opposed to like 30 knights. What do you guys think?
I don't think she really has a choice at this point. Like she said towards the end, I'd rather go in as a guest than go in as a hostage. But at this particular time, like, she only has a certain amount of people. What is she going to do? I mean, she's the heir. Like, it's like her father said, you can't trust everyone. So why are you going to trust Damien to go in your stead? It's not your task, it's hers. Because I don't think he knows everything that's going on.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like, again, like, Dorne is supposed to be their biggest ally. Like, what good would it be for them to take her as a hostage? I mean, if you have think of the Humbers, right, and the Boltons. Or the Mendeleys and the Boltons, yeah, they're good allies as long as the other person has a hostage. Then they betray them. Like, that's not the right way to make long-term allies, like having people hostage. But like what I was saying before, one of Arianne's first thought is your brother is not. I mean, not Arianne, Daemon. Your brother is not at Storm's End. At Storm's End, we know that now. And like I was saying, maybe Lycino should not have been as direct, and he should have let her on a little bit about that. That would have convinced her more.
Well, but Lycino also didn't know that they'd send Quentyn over to Daenerys, so he doesn't know that there would be an incentive for Arianne to know that Dany is coming. As far as he knows, the only incentive about Dany is that there's dragons, not that his brother should be, at least for them, with Dany. So he doesn't have that extra information to have played his cards well.
I don't get why Daemon Sand is so okay, we're done here, when that wasn't the mission wasn't to find out if Quentyn is at Storm's End. That was never the mission. The mission was to find out if Aegon is for real or not. And in order to find out if, for real or not, she's gonna have to go check it out. And yeah, I mean, it is a bold strategy here, Cotton. We'll see how it plays out. See what's
Yeah,
up for them.
yeah, I mean, that was it. But that was also, I think, part of the plan was like, Ariane, you take zero risk, you inform me all the way, you make no rash decisions, and like just it was like get as much information as you can. Not, I mean, it was for Doran to pick side. It was not for Ariane to do so. Ariane was just supposed to find information.
But he said only tell, like, she has to know for certain. So she has to physically see them. So I think she doesn't have a choice. She has to, like, confirm it.
Also, Arianne doesn't feel like she has a choice. Look, she says, what makes us believe that they will allow me that choice? She had the uneasy feeling that Haldon Halfmaster and Lysane Omar were going to be put her on that ship some morning whether she willed it or not. Best not to test them. It's better to go willing than just be forced, because they don't have to actually have her as a hostage. They just have to persuade her very strongly to get on that ship. And then once she's in Storm's End, they're like, oh, it's not safe. Oh, there's a lot of excuses you can give without actually getting someone as a hostage. You know, they're, oh, you don't have enough people. Oh, you're at risk. Oh, and there are a lot of excuses you can say without actually putting an alliance at risk. So I think she thinks, well, if I go by myself and I go willing, maybe, it'll be easier and I'll have more, more things to play.
Yeah, sorry, I'm back, by the way. The other thing too is that it goes back to what Arianne was talking about with the sellswords at Mistwood, where she's talking with Lady Merton, and she's talking about how some of these women, no one was forced to do anything. It might be that some of them were convinced to do something with to sleep with the Golden Company sellswords. But it's not like she really has a real choice in the matter either. Like, she's going to Storm's End whether she wills it or not.
Jerry?
I mean,
Okay. One thing I did find kind of interesting about this chapter that you saw at the beginning that kind of plays here, or at least in my opinion, was that she's making she's making a decision, making a strategic decision on this. Is that she finally won a game of Syvas in this chapter. It's the first time she's always lost, always been a loser at playing that game, but she finally won against what's his name, Josh, forget his last name. Josh Wood. Okay, so she finally won against him. So I don't know, maybe that might be showing a sign that she's finally getting better at making decisions, and this decision is actually a good one. Fortune favors the bowl kind of type decision. I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I know, yeah, I kind of think the opposite. Like, it's not so much that she loses at Syvas, it's that at some point she's like, oh, I'm tired of those games. And that she's not willing to learn how to properly play the game. That, to me, is not very good news.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, I think that, she has a certain mission, and I think she doesn't want to screw this one up. She has the whole Quentin thing in the back of her mind, and she's trying to find out what happened, because that was part of the plan, but she also knows that the plan is going awry, at least on one end, so she's trying to see if maybe this part will work out. And it's like, all right, well, I'm already in the middle of this. I can't really turn back, because if I do, I failed my father, and I also don't get to find out if maybe I become Queen of Westeros my damn self. So, I think right now she's playing the game as best as she can from the position that she's in. She really doesn't have too much of a leg to stand on. She knows that she's not going to be taken hostage, because you can't expect for Dorne to come to Aegon's side if she's taken hostage. But it might be too dangerous for her to go back right now because of what's going on with this new war that they've just brought to Westeros. So
Right.
I think she's just like, you know what? Let's just go to Storm's End, see if this is the real Aegon, try to ride this out for as long as possible, and then the moment that we can get back to Dorne safely, we'll do that.
Right on. So does anyone else have anything to add before the last question?
I mean, she's basically being very foolish, though, at the same time. Like, she might be following her own, having her own agency, so to speak, but she is violating Arianne Martell's idea just to observe, because by going to Storm's End, by the very act of going to Storm's End, she is bringing herself into the war and Dorne into the war as well. You know, it's a prelude of things to come. You know, the plan is already going sideways on Arianne Martell. Spoken by Damon Sam, where he says, you know, don't go, I'll go instead. You know, who cares? I'm just some damn bastard from Dorne. No one's going to care if I'm siding with Aegon. But you being in Storm's End is a major statement to the realm that Dorne is going to back this dragon, and that's going to have major consequences for the Dornish going forward.
I mean, but remember, that was, you know, only if they get seen. The whole thing was just get in and get out without other people seeing you. You can go and treat with them and have conversations and come back, but just make sure that no one else outside of this sees you. Now, yeah, her going to Storm's End, it's a possibility that she gets spotted by, you know, someone in the Tyrell army or maybe someone from another house. But I mean, and that's the part of the reason why, you know, look, if I were her, it's like, get on the damn boat, because at least, you know, the Tyrell army is a ways away. They're not going to get there and possibly spot you before you get there. And it's like, hey, you know what? You can always say, look, all right, my dad just wanted me to come here and check this out. We got to go. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the question you really have to want to ask is the Dorne move really the right move? I mean, this is a guy who folds when he has pocket aces just because he's afraid he doesn't know what everyone else has. So, is that really the right thing to do, or, you know, you play the odds and get on the boat?
Well, Arianne Martell, if he ends up joining with Aegon, is throwing his lot in with the side, and, you know, we know that they take Storm's End, and that's a big coup, and then there's another battle coming up, which I'll have a lot more to say soon about that. But the thing is that the Golden Company doesn't have very good odds of taking King's Landing, just if you look at it from an objectively. The Golden Company is 10,000 guys against the might of Casterly Rock and Highgarden at the time. Now, there's going to be a lot of variables that are going to interplay here, but just think about it. You have 15,000 maybe Dorne spears in the Prince's Pass and the Boneway, 10,000 Golden Company swordsmen. The might of the Reach is 100,000 strong. They're outnumbered 4-1 if the entirety of the Reach comes together, which they won't. But take that into consideration to Dorne's planning purposes. He can't back the side that has outnumbered 4-1 by Tyrells alone, not to count the 20,000 or so Lannisters that can also join the fray. So there's a lot of considerations that Dorne is like, yeah, there's good reason for me not to jump in on the side of Aegon. He doesn't have pocket aces. He's got pocket deuces, and he's about to go all in on pocket deuces in this play. Well, he's going to be forced to by Arianne, most likely.
And well, you know, in all fairness, I have won a hand on 7 deuce. You know, going all in on 7 deuce.
Well,
Hey, pocket deuces is better than 7 deuce. So.
But yeah, could one of your varials potentially be a Tyrell switch?
I don't think the Tyrells are going to switch. I think the Tyrells are intermarried with the current ruling family. What rationale do they have to switch?
Or how about Tarly?
Tarly, definitely. Tarly's definitely going to switch.
What about the Florence, too?
Florence will not switch because they're up in the north with Stannis. I think so the major Reach families that are probably going to switch are the Tarleys and the Rowans, because Mathis Rowan is the Tyrell commander who's besieging Storm's End after Mace Tyrell heads back to King's Landing. So, and Mathis Rowan is a really big Targaryen supporter, and all of a sudden, oh my God, look what just happened. Rhaegar's son has come back to life magically, or has never died, whatever it is going to be. Here he is to avenge all of the evil deeds that Tywin Lannister did. Because, in A Storm of Swords, they have that famous, maybe not that famous, but that big small council meeting where Tywin Lannister is talking about, I will bring justice to the Dornish and give them the mountain. And, Tyrion is looking at the various counselors, and he's like, Redwyn doesn't care. Mathis Rowan looks fit to gag because he was personally offended because it's a horrific act what Tywin Lannister did. So having like a magic, here's Aegon, he actually survived, is going to be a big news for this guy.
Right.
Bigger news for the Dornish too, given their if Aegon is real, which he's not, he would be part Dornish.
So are we ready to move on to the last question, guys?
Yes.
Okay, so essentially the last question I wanted to ask was, do you see anything dangerous happening at Storm's End, first off? Second off, do you see any impending doom in Arianne's storyline, and does she survive the Winds of Winter or the next book? Does she survive the story? Go for it.
No, I don't think she's going to survive, only because I just don't think she's wise enough to play this game. And it's because she doesn't really have interest. She kind of, in a way, reminds me of Cersei, where you want this power, but you don't really know what to do with it. I don't think she's more cunning than Cersei, but as far as wanting something but not really knowing what to do with it, I think she's in a position where she's getting this power where she's the authority, but she's not making the wisest moves. So I don't see her getting so many chances down the line. It's one of those, you either win or you die, and if you don't even have interest in playing the game or knowing the rules of it or anything like that, I don't see how she's going to survive where people are really playing this game.
She did.
Nice.
I
agree.
hope she doesn't die, but yeah, this does not bode well for her on any front. Do we know exactly how many characters George plans on killing off in the next book?
A good amount.
George has said he's going to reduce the number of point of view characters. Arianne might not be on the chopping block immediately because you need a point of view perspective for Aegon as he moves towards King's Landing. And Jon Connington's days are numbered. I think Jon Connington is a greater candidate for dying sooner than Arianne, but Arianne will eventually meet her fate, most likely by Dragonfire when Daenerys arrives.
Yeah, basically, I think Quentin's story, sort of foreshadowed the entire Dornish arc. Like, he's gonna be foiled plans one after the other, and yeah, I think the Martells are gone.
Yeah, I think it's going to work out for her in the short term, and the Martells will get behind Aegon. But once, this is a prophesized false dragon that is going to go against Daenerys, and as much as I'd like to see the Martells come out on top of that, I'm not betting on George writing that. I'm betting George writes Daenerys Watson.
Tink?
I really want her to survive and the Martells to survive. I don't think that it's going to work out with Aegon, but I think the Martells can make it. They're sneaky. At least I'm just hoping. I really, really hope, because I really like them. And for some reason, all the characters that I really like end up getting screwed, like the Starks. So please, not make the Martells the second ones that get thoroughly screwed.
You just have to start liking Ramsay and the Freys and the Greyjoys, and
they're all gonna die screaming as well. So, or at least they freaking better.
What if Walder Frey sits on the Iron Throne?
Oh yeah.
It's never happened.
Don't even joke.
Oh, I'm sure someone somewhere has written something about that.
Yeah. It'll never happen.
Well, Littlefinger's definitely going to sit on the Iron Throne.
That'll never happen.
I don't think
You don't hope for that. Yeah, no, he don't want to. But
I don't think he'd want to, anyways. I think he'd prefer something more like The Hand, or something that is, not as front and center. He works better, you know, at the sides where he can manipulate other people and stuff and not be so,
Well, he
you
also
know,
doesn't want to be the target.
exactly.
You know, this might be a good spot for someone who's in the comment sections, which is Radio Westeros released their Littlefinger episodes, part 1 and 2, which are really good, which have a very interesting prediction for how Littlefinger's arc will go down in the end. I used to believe differently, but now I've kind of come to their perspective on how Littlefinger's arc will play out. So
Hopefully glorious, but
Yeah, no, I don't know. I love their episode so much. I just see, for some reason, I don't know. I just see Sansa's arc being more like the same thing, but in the Riverlands. But I think she's more southern than northern.
Yeah.
no wolf.
So in the end, we all kind of, with some optimism from Tink, but we all kind of believe that the Martells will not have a happy ending, we could say.
80%.
Yeah. So that being said, does anyone else have anything to add before we start shutting this down?
Well, I have a couple of announcements. Okay. So, the next Clash of Queens number 5, will be on April 30th, and then the next chapter reread, from the Hype Swatch will be held on May 21st. We don't have the chapter decided yet for that one. Might depend on our mood, on a bunch of things. I thought we were going to do Bran, but because I really, really, really want to do that Bran chapter, but I want to wait for T-Baby, who unfortunately is not available on the 21st. But if you have suggestions, please, please, please leave them in the comments.
All right. So, was that all your announcements? Okay, so we'll do a sign off one by one. If our guest wants to go ahead first, kind of plug whatever you want, and yeah.
Well, it was a lot of fun being here with you guys today. I haven't really done one of these before with so many people and getting so many perspectives on a chapter, which is illuminating lots of cool points. So I'm the part of the Wars and Politics, Spice and Fire blog. On Monday, I'll have a essay coming out, which is about what happens after Aegon takes Storm's End. We know that at the very end of the chapter, Haldan Halfmaester says that a Tyrell army is descending on Storm's End, and that Aegon is marching out to confront the might of the Reach, and it's going to be a fascinating battle that'll resemble a historical battle from the 15th century called the Battle of Agincourt. So I think you guys will maybe like it. I'm still kind of working on the edits, and I need to finish the conclusion of it. But it's going to be out on Monday, and it'll be in audio format as well. So a lot of stuff from this Arianne chapter will end up getting into that. Analysis itself, and to getting some feedback very fast, and maybe I'll.
All right, then we kind of lost you. You're a little choppy there towards the end. If you wanted to repeat that last part.
And thank you for having me, and looking forward to maybe doing one of these again in the future sometime. Did that come out a little less choppy?
No, that's good. That's good. We got that. All right, so ladies next. Sign off and hype anything you want or whatnot.
Oh, I mean, it was wonderful being here. I'm glad we did that chapter. I'm really glad we have Jeff on that chapter. That made me really happy. I'm going on vacation tomorrow. I'm going to be going to NYC, and I hope I will see Don Willie there. That's going to be amazing. If you guys want me, I know I've not made a video in forever, like 4 or 5 months. But if you guys want me to try and vlog that, let me know.
Right on. T? Or...
Oh, well, this was fun, and you know, Game of Thrones is coming back on, so Small Council is going to be back Wednesday at 7, so look forward to that. And always, you know, the Clash of Queens is coming, and you know how it is. Tank's going to rant about killing people, you know. It's going to be fun, so I'm excited about that, and I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation.
Anyways, it was great doing a reread again. It'd been some time, so I really enjoyed it. And Game of Thrones is starting again soon, as T said. I'm really excited, and I'm going to be doing my reviews like I did for the last season. Bye, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Oh, actually, I'm sorry, I'm talking again. I'm still not sure whether or not I'm going to watch the next season. So please, people, because we're doing those live, in the next Clash of Queens, no show questions.
Right on, right on. Jerry?
Yeah, it was great being here. I had a lot of fun. I'm a little bit nervous for next week when the HBO's fan fiction Game of Thrones starts up again, but hopefully we'll see if the Hypes Watch can do a little bit more on that. But yeah, till then, till the next video next month.
Just do it, Jerry. Just do it.
Don Willie?
Yeah, you know, it was great to do one of these. We haven't done one of these in a while, and can't wait for the next one. You know, obviously, we all know about Game of Thrones, so I'm not going to keep on repeating that one. You guys already know what the deal is. And, yeah, thanks again for watching, for everyone who's in the chat room, and Hail Hydra.
Yeah, thank you guys, and sorry for York Boy who arrived. I mean, and it was not just York Boy, I'm sorry, but all of you, the Iron Underneath, like all of you guys who just arrived at the end, we're very sorry. It was a short one. We don't have time for taking questions this time. We will make up for it for the next one.
Yeah, so once again, all of our channels are in the description. I just wanted to point out that on April 22nd, I believe it's next Friday night at 8 Eastern, I'll be doing a live What's the Difference? My channel. We're going to be talking about the stabbing of Jon Snow. So hope you guys can come over and join me live for that. Until next time, guys, we're done here.
Bye.
You have to click us off, Ann.
Oh, and forget I'm the moderator. I'm not used. That's too much responsibility for me. Bye.